Know my rights, man.
All right. Well, I am very excited to have my friend and colleague Abbie Barnes here for the inaugural episode of I Know My Rights Man, the podcast dedicated to all things criminal law. Abbie and I have been practicing law here in Paducah for about 20 years, and she's the go-to gal for any family law questions I have, and a great criminal defense lawyer in her own right. So, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's good to be here, Dave. Happy to be a part of it. My name is Abigail Barnes. I work at Alfred Law Office, and I have been practicing family law and family law for the last maybe almost 10 years, and criminal law primarily prior to that. So my total career has been, 2009. So what is that, 17 years now?
Time
Oh,
flies. I
Vicky.
don't know how we became middle-aged.
I know.
Well, we're going to dive right into it, talking about search and seizure. I think the thing that is most helpful for people is some practical advice. And
Right, right, right.
I'll let you go first, whatever is on the top of your head.
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is, and I think that almost every criminal law attorney would say this, is just shut the fuck up. Keep your mouth shut. Do not consent to a search. You've got to make the police and the government do their job. If you make it easy for them, they're just happy to run right over your rights, and you can't protect your rights without using the tools that the Constitution gives to you.
Whole lot to be said about that. You know, the first thing you said was don't shut up, don't talk to the police. And that is about 99.9% of the time good advice. I've said in the past that it's, sometimes it makes sense to talk to the police, but you do that with your lawyer present.
Yeah, you do not do that without talking to an attorney first and having an attorney say, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And the
Um,
biggest, one issue with talking to the police when we're talking about search and seizure is human beings, you want to please people. You want people to be happy with you, and you don't want to be rude, and you don't want people mad at you. And so a lot of us are like, okay, well, I'll talk to this police officer and it'll be okay. And they're maybe not intending to consent to a search. And the next thing that it's very hard to just say no with,
It
with,
is. Yeah,
with
I mean, even as an attorney, I think the instinct is like, I know what I'm doing. I know my rights. I'm not gonna let them like overstep. But what people don't realize, especially people who don't have continuous contact with the police or with the criminal justice system, they believe that everything is fair and balanced, and that they don't have anything to worry about as long as they're innocent. And I will tell you this, and you know this, Dave, as much as I do, but the police do not come knocking at your door unless they have something that they want to get out of you. They think you have already committed a crime. They aren't there to just get your side of the story to let you clear your name. They're there to see if they can get you to confess to something so that they don't have to do any further investigation.
Yeah, I always tell people they're not there to give you a good citizenship award, probably.
Right.
Talking specifically about the issue of consent, the problem there is that once you say, yes, you can come into my house, or yes, you can search my car, the police no longer need a reason, an excuse, anything. You have given them all that they need to engage in that search. And if you've consented the vast majority of the time, there's nothing your lawyer can do after the fact to fix that. First off, most of the time when they're asking for consent, it's because they can't search without consent.
They
And
want
so
to
say
get in
no.
your car. They want to get in your house.
Yeah.
And again, they want you to make it easy for them to do so.
Well, and another thing I'm sure you've seen plenty of times is the police officer believes that he's got probable cause, authority to search, whatever, and will ask for consent anyway. And the reason they're asking for consent there is then there's not going to be a fight about it later down the road.
Yeah,
You,
just in
you
case
know,
they're wrong. They've got
Yeah.
they've got
Uh,
all bases covered.
from the standpoint of the citizen in this scenario, there's basically just never a good reason to consent to a search, and so just say no. And I'll also say the magic words, really in any encounter with law enforcement are, "I don't want to talk without my lawyer."
Yeah, and what I find in most of my clients that do speak to the police without a lawyer or do consent to a search, it's typically because they're afraid it's going to make them look more guilty if they don't do what the police ask them to do. If they say they want a lawyer, then to them that makes the police think, okay, well they must be guilty, and we're going to go ahead and arrest you. Or if they say I don't want to consent to a search, that automatically gives the police in a I say civilian's mind, in a layperson's mind, that automatically gives them suspicion that there's something they're going to find in that vehicle. But my advice to my clients is always that if they're there asking you those questions, be prepared to be arrested anyway,
Yeah.
because they're not there because they think you're innocent. They're there because they think they're going to find something. You make them do their job. If they're going to arrest you, they're going to arrest you. Just be ready to call the police or call your attorney.
The way that a mentor of mine put that is, if the police tell you, if you don't talk to me, I'm going to arrest you, stick your hands out,
Yep.
get arrested, because talking ain't gonna, A, is not gonna get you out of it,
Nope.
and B is potentially gonna make things a whole lot worse.
Yeah, and even if you are, and even if you are innocent, the way that officers are trained to investigate and interpret people's statements or the things that they find in a home or a vehicle, they're trained specifically to try and find the guilt there, especially if they're already there and determining in their mind that they're on the right track. So
You
they're
know,
going to use your words against you every single time.
I tend to I tend to be I try to be fair to people, and you know, most of the police are good people. They're trying to make the world a better place, and from their point of view.
Most
Um,
of them.
yeah, there's exceptions.
Always, always.
And so I think that the average citizen thinks, I'll just explain my side of it, and this person, wants good things, and they'll be reasonable and all that stuff. But the gamesmanship of it, the sort of fox and the hound nature of criminal law, even a cop that's trying to be fair and trying to be good to people,
They,
they want to charge somebody with crime.
yeah, and they hear what they want to hear, as many of us do when we have a goal we're trying to reach. It's very easy for us to pick out the words that are said and use that as proof of what we're looking for. For example, I've had a case in the past where there was a tracker that was left on somebody's vehicle. And when the police came and spoke to my client told them, well, it's my vehicle. I can put a tracker on it if I want to. The police and the prosecutor use that as an admission. To me, that's just a statement of the law. Like, that's true. If you own the vehicle, you can put a tracker on your own vehicle. Now, that's not saying I did. It just is saying that you can. So I do know that the prosecutor and the police in that case very much felt that that was an admission of a crime. So
Yeah, yeah, they're going to take it the way that they want to take it, and they've got their own motivations. Well, it's a wonderful segue to the next thing I want to talk about, which is, when do the police need a warrant? And one example would be, if the police want to put a tracker on your car, they do need a warrant to do that. Uh,
absolutely.
Likewise, they sometimes do something called a pole camera, where they install a camera outside someone's house. That generally requires a warrant. There,
Wiretaps, which have become a big thing,
why
those
we're seeing a
require,
lot more wiretaps than we
yep.
used to, and that is absolutely something that requires a warrant. And in general, sort of broadly speaking, if they're searching a house, they need a
Yes.
warrant. Yeah, there's exceptions to every rule,
I was
but
gonna say that the exceptions
yeah.
do, and the exceptions do keep growing. It's
Yeah.
in this day and age, there's
So
a lot that's
I might
changed.
have missed something, but I think we've kind of covered the big areas where they basically have to have a warrant. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they still need, they don't. And maybe you tell me if I'm wrong about this, but don't they also need a warrant to get into your car if they don't have like some specific probable cause or reasonable suspicion to like go ahead and get in there?
Sure. Well, they have to have legal justification for getting in your car. The reason I don't think of it as a place where they need warrants is that the overwhelming majority of car searches are being done, on the side of the road or in a public place. And
Right,
there's
right,
something
right.
called the automobile exception,
Mhm.
which, to make a long story short, makes it easier for them to search a car than it is to search a house. I think the biggest thing, though, for someone that's interested in this subject just as a citizen, is you don't deal with this issue by arguing with the cop. No, you
That's
have to have a warrant.
exactly right.
Yeah, and the cop is saying, I don't have to have a warrant. Uh,
You're not winning
it-
points by being angry about
yeah.
your rights being
Uh,
violated.
Yeah, 100%. You just say I'm not consenting, I'm not agreeing, and then
And
they're either going to search it or they're not going to search it. And the technical legal question about whether they should have had a warrant
that
is
comes
something
down to us.
something we deal with later. So why don't you explain a little bit about how that works, how we fight illegal searches?
If you are charged with a crime, then you bring those facts to your attorney. Your attorney gets discovery. They get an opportunity to go through and look at the warrant if they did get a warrant, and see if the warrant was executed properly. And if they go in without your consent and without a warrant, then we have an opportunity to look at those facts and compare those facts to the law. We file motions in the court to, argue what the violation is. We tell the court that your rights were violated. We give them the basis on which we think that they were violated. Then we have a hearing. We bring the cop into the courtroom and they testify to what they believe happened, and we get an opportunity to question them. And then we essentially, most of the time, we brief the case for the court and give them the law that we're relying on.
And so what you've just described there is what we call a suppression hearing. And what
Right.
we're seeking as lawyers is for the evidence to be suppressed or excluded.
Right.
And the judge first has to make a determination about was the search lawful or not.
Right.
Then, if they think the search was illegal, there's a second question about what, if anything, should be suppressed.
Exactly.
The idea behind it is that if we throw out evidence when the police engage in an illegal search, that next time they won't engage in an illegal search because they're not getting convictions
Right.
when they do that.
Because it's not about letting somebody off on a technicality, like, or I think a lot of law-abiding citizens look at something being suppressed as maybe that's not fair. And if somebody had something in their vehicle or in their home that was illegal, then they should pay the price for that, regardless of how it was found. But that's just not how the Constitution was written. And we have those rights for a reason. And as you can see in the this day and age and the things that we're seeing all over the country right now, people's rights are being violated left and right, and they are law-abiding citizens, and they are still having people, being pulled out of their houses and detained for no reason, or having their doors broken down and agents coming into their house, and that is in and of itself traumatic. And that's the point of stopping, like of having these constitutional rights and actually having them protected. And that's one of the reasons that I really like doing criminal law, because I believe in that stuff. And I want to make sure that our rights are protected. And a lot of times, the only way to do that is when we have a case where something was found, it was found illegally, and we bring it to court. And the court is using that opportunity almost as a punishment to the state for the government for violating your rights. Those rights are so important to us as Americans that there needs to be a deterrent for the police to follow them. Otherwise, they'll just keep doing it. And we see it
Yeah,
happening every day.
one of the biggest issues is that for better or for worse, I will say for worse, our system here in America has basically decided it ought to be impossible to sue a cop. That's maybe overstating it just a little bit, but if a police officer engages in an illegal search and you sue him and you say he ought to have to pay me for violating my rights, that is going to be you're not going to get anywhere.
You're
That
not going to get
case
very
is
far
going
with
to be
that.
thrown out. In general, it's just insanely difficult to prosecute law enforcement or as I say prosecute to sue law enforcement or to sue the government. It very hard. There have been a lot of decisions that have just constantly been a one-way ratchet that made it more difficult
Yeah, they
to sue
just
them
keep
for
ratcheting up that
yeah.
immunity.
So they've left us in a situation where, well, I can't sue them for money. What can we do? And the
We
only thing
have to have
to
some
do
recourse.
and the recourse is these suppression issues, and what it means is the police are losing some of their incentive for violating the law next time. So you talked about this a little bit, but what do you think about this day and age? We're seeing just total lawlessness from the federal government right now.
Yeah, total lawlessness, and it's very, very concerning. One of the things that concerns me the most is that, as we were stating earlier, most police officers are good people, and they're not really out there trying to violate your rights. Now, they may get something wrong, and your rights might be violated, but typically that's because they're wrong about the facts, not because they're trying to hurt you. But we see, and just an example, what when we're describing like in this day and age, I'm talking about what we're seeing with ICE, and the way that they're
Yeah,
executing.
we're making an assumption here that society is still going to be existing in a few years. So we're talking
Right.
to you from the year of 2026. It's a fucked up time to be alive.
Yep. Yep.
ICE in particular is engaging
Out of
in
hand.
just left and right violation of constitutional rights. The from my perspective, the hardest thing is seeing the violence that they are directing towards citizens.
Yeah, just exercising their First Amendment
Yeah,
right.
well, and I say citizens, but immigrants too. I don't care. The level of violence they're engaging in is crazy. But they are also committing Fourth Amendment search and seizure violations all the
All the time. They're going into people's homes with just an administrative warrant, which is not the same thing as a judicial warrant. And a lot of times they're being encouraged to go in without a warrant at all. And that just makes us lose all of our protections. And a lot of people think, well, if you're a citizen of the United States, then you don't have to worry about that. But one of the things that people may not be paying attention to is that there is a Senate bill that has been brought before the Senate in Kentucky. It's Senate Bill 86. And they are asking the Senate to allow and actually force local police departments to enter into contracts with ICE, which then means they're trained in the same way that ICE is trained, and then they
or
are
not trained.
exactly, and then they are given the freedom, from their perspective, to use those same tactics on anyone that they're pulling over. Like, they're typically we're not allowed to be racially profiled. That's gone out the window. And if they're saying that ICE can go in with a non-judicial warrant or not a warrant at all into your home, then nobody is protected, like even from your local police department, because they are going to be partnering with ICE if this bill passes. And I haven't checked today, and I don't know that if it's been voted on or not, but I'm very concerned that Kentucky is in fact going to allow that to happen. Now, I think Governor Bashir will veto that. The question then becomes whether or not the Senate has enough support to override that veto.
You know, you made reference to using racial profiling as a justification for stopping people, or actually for arresting people. Um, there was a footnote written by Justice Kavanaugh, then I don't remember the name of the case, where essentially he said it's fine to use race, national origin, accent as issues that you're looking at when you're deciding whether there's reasonable suspicion. It's just an outrageous thing. And
And
in the
it's
league,
completely opposite of the precedent that's been set for like what, 250 something years?
yeah, you know, we live in a melting pot. We're supposed to be diverse. So anyway, in the legal community, they started referring to those as Kavanaugh stops. And
Wow.
I think that it got back to him because he recently has written a concurrence where he's tried to walk that back.
Well, once you let that cat out of the bag, it's awfully hard to put it back in.
Yeah, it is terrifying. I will say this to brighten things up just a little bit. There have been some federal judges that are really coming down on ICE and on the U.S. attorneys, and it won't surprise me if we start seeing people go to jail. And I'm
Yeah.
talking about lawyers going to
Yeah. And I think that, one
uh,
of the things that we tend to forget is that, and we say this all the time, but it's easy to forget when all this terrible stuff is happening. But the wheels of justice do turn slowly, and it may not be fixed today, but eventually, hopefully, it will be.
I want to change gears just a little bit. Our constitutional right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, that comes from the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, and it is incorporated against the states through the 14th Amendment. We also in Kentucky have Section 10 of the Kentucky Constitution, which gives you a right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And a lot of what you and I have been describing about constitutional law is not written in the Constitution. It's an interpretation on what's there. But what's there in the Constitution says that they can't engage in unreasonable searches and seizures. And there is a federal judge in West Virginia that has found that the ICE practice of regularly wearing masks and being anonymous, that is unreasonable, setting everything else aside. That is
Thank
an
God.
unreasonable way to seize people. And it really it gives me some hope that things are going to turn around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, because just imagine, like, I know how I would feel if some masked man came up to me and tried to drag me out of my car. I'm not one to carry a weapon, but I know that there are people who do. And if you're not identifying yourself as a police officer, you're putting yourself in some kind of danger there because, you could end up getting hurt. And I think that that's terrifying for us as citizens, but it's also very scary for our police officers because if you are not identified as an officer and you try to essentially kidnap somebody off of the street, you could end up getting yourself shot. And I mean, like, I think that that's a very dangerous proposition to put and position to put police officers in because, who am I to know if you're an officer and you're not announcing yourself, you're just wearing a mask and pulling me out of my car. Like, we haven't seen that happen yet. Thank goodness for them, but it's pretty scary on both sides.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I am happy that the legal profession is doing what it can to fight back against this stuff. I kind of don't think we're going to get any action out of the legislative side of things
No, they seem
anytime
to be
soon.
pretty
Uh,
useless at this point.
who knows? Who knows? We don't know what the future may bring. But I think we've covered enough for perhaps one episode of I Know My Rights, Man. And I think the headline of all this stuff is "Don't consent to a search."
Don't consent.
That's the most important thing. The other issues that we're talking about here get sorted out when you go to court. Your lawyer walks you through this stuff, handles this stuff for you, but none of that's going to happen if you just agree to
Yeah.
searched.
And I think it's important to remember as a citizen, that you can do that in a way that isn't going to put you in a position where you're angering the cops. And the more angry an officer gets, and the more threatening a situation gets, and the more amped up your feelings are and their feelings are, it puts everybody in a position of like fighting and more danger, and it raises that level. You can protect your rights without fighting about it. You can be very polite about it, and you can just, if that your rights are violated, then it's going to be up to your lawyer to make sure that those are protected in court.
Yeah, 100%. You don't need to get into a fight with them. I have seen my fair share of body cameras where someone says, "No, you can't search my car without a warrant," and often they're wrong.
And
Okay,
tries to stop
you can't
them
you
or,
can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. You don't need to do that. Just say I'm not consenting to a search.
yep,
And if they go ahead and they search anyway, that's unfortunate, but we'll deal with it when we go to court. You don't need to try to win an argument with the cop because you probably won't.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. The very first episode of my podcast. Both of our viewers, I'm sure, got a real kick
Gonna be
out of
super excited about it.
it.
Fist bump for having me on, and this was really interesting and fun. And I really hope that this is continues to be successful for you, because
All
it's a
right.
really cool idea.
Thanks again. Bye.
Talk to you later.
Know my rights, man.